Hey guys, welcome back. I just wanted to start off again. We're going to be doing another lesson in our creative expression unit. Um, and this time we're going to focus a bit on setting. So, a couple of things. First off, in Schoology, I have a link, and that link is to watch a video called The Fox and the Mouse. So, I'm going to ask that you watch the video first. It actually shows up in here just a little bit later, and there is a link. But I think it's going to be a lot easier to not interrupt what we're saying and just have you watch the video first. So if you haven't done that already, then I'm going to ask that you go there and watch that. It's a cute little video. It's only a few minutes long. Um, and it'll give us something to talk about through the rest of this. And obviously, since we're talking about setting, I really want you to think about the setting and the importance of the setting on that particular piece. So that being said, if you've already watched it, we're going to continue to move on. We are, again, going to be writing narratives and working because we know the ultimate goal in this particular unit is for us to actually write our own narrative. So this writing narratives to develop real or imagined experiences. In this case, we're working on fiction, so we're looking at imagined experiences using effective technique. And here, our technique we're going to be talking about or thinking about in particular is setting. Okay, so you're going to be thinking about the setting. And we're going to try to choose details that work the best. Because even though usually in our first drafts or when we first start thinking about things, we usually think of it in our current time frame or in the place that we live. Sometimes when we think about it, we realize that this would be so much more effective or would reach so many more people if we kind of change things up. So we're going to try to think about what our story would look like in a different setting or in a different place. And that's because we want all of those details to be, and here's the keyword, well chosen. And we also want everything to be well structured. We're going to be putting this all together to make sense. And sometimes that means that we're going to do things like have flashbacks or different things like that. And that's all in our time setting and how we're doing it. But we have to have a clear idea of what happens beginning to end all the time. And that's because in the end, we are trying to produce this clear and coherent writing. And so we're going to work on developing and we're going to work on our organization and ultimately our style so that it's appropriate for our task, our purpose, and our audience. And we've talked about this quite a few times. And then because we also want to see what the masters have done, what other people who have been super good at this have done, we are going to read and comprehend literature that really focuses on this. And we're going to be working, in this case, on stories. We've already done a drama. We did Macbeth earlier, and we've definitely done some poems throughout the year. So, this is just something else for us to do. So, yeah. So that's our standards. Because like we said, our overall goal is to write our own story and that we are going to be trying to provide insight and understanding to people so that people can connect and feel. This is the big word right here, feel. We want them to feel the situation instead of just knowing about it. And again, we aren't bound by reality. Because we're not bound by reality, we can do what we want in this story in order to really get our ideas through. This is going to have to be 5 pages, double spaced at least. I always get asked, can it be longer? Yes, of course it can be. And we are going to have a clear central idea and theme. And we've already come up with that central idea or theme. I told you if it changes as you go along or you realize, hey, I want to do a little something different, you are certainly allowed to do that. And the other big thing is it's going to be thoughtfully crafted. So I want you to really make sure you've thought about all of the things we've done. We've done conflict and theme and story structure, all of those things. And now we're on to settings. So we want to have the very best settings we possibly could have. And you can use a lot of different genres. We've already talked about that. You can do this as spoken word poetry. You can do it as a short story. Or if you really want to try something different, you can try a one-act play. I'm certainly game for whatever version of this you think is going to be the best. And we may have to do a little bit of tweaking. We may end up having to have you give me for the one act play or spoken word poem, you may have to end up kind of putting those on a video and sending them to me, and that would be okay also. But we'll worry about that if we still aren't together later. If we are together, that would be awesome. So hopefully we can get into a little different way than this. Um, but of course, we always get the question of what exactly is setting. Setting is an environment or a surrounding in which an event or a story takes place. It may provide particular information about placement and timing, such as New York, America in the year 1820. It could be simply be descriptive. Um, you also are including in this, and this is something that I don't think we always talk about, but the social conditions or the historical timeline. So you have to think about it's not just the setting as in it's in this year in this place. Okay, but what is that year like? What is, if you set yours, I mean, just imagine your story right now and imagine it's in the year um, 3020, right? Instead of 2020. It's 1,000 years from now. Okay, so what are social conditions like? What has happened in the last 1,000 years that, clearly we don't know about right now? Um, Geographic location is another thing. And if you put it in the year 3020, maybe those locations look completely different than they do now. So that's something you're totally welcome to do. You can play around with as much as you'd like. You can also think about things like what is the weather? If all of a sudden we've had global warming and that year of 3000 has completely taken over, or maybe we're in another ice age by that time. I don't know. You just have to be able to think about what it's actually like. You need to know the immediate surroundings and all the different things that are going on. If you want some more ideas on some things that you can do, you can always make things also like a historical drama or something like that, and you can go back in time. You can make this be a medieval piece. You can make it be something that is caveman time if you want. Anything you want to do, but right here, this link is also an excellent place to go. I really recommend this site for any of these things that we've been talking about because they give great examples of things. And it's called literarydevices.net. And here we are looking at setting. But that's a really good place if you're kind of like, oh, I don't know, I can't think of anything. That's a good place to go. So this is where we were going to watch the video, but hopefully you watched it and it's a cute video. It's a really cute video. So hopefully you've looked at it. And I want you to think, because this is going to be the first thing that I'm going to have you do, is I want you to kind of think, and you're going to write a blog, and it's also up in Schoology, but the blog is going to be about how you think the setting was so important to this particular piece, because that's the discussion we would have in class, right? Why was the setting important? Was it important that they were, in this particular place? What is the timing, the timeline? How much time took place from the very beginning where we see this fox, right, until the very end? And that's something very important for you to think about. And think about why did they need that particular setting and that particular set of circumstances to happen in the way that it did in order to make the theme be obvious. And that, of course, brings us to the question of what did you think the theme was? So all of those things are really important for you to think about and to consider because I think it's obvious here, with the place and the time and everything of how important all of that is. And so that's where what we're going to have on that blog is how was the setting important to the video. And that's going to be up as a discussion. So you guys will be able to see each other's responses and to maybe even respond to each other, So if you think that there was something else that somebody missed, you certainly can add to it. You can respond to them if you think that they really didn't get something, and of course we have our characters. And in here, this is the characters. Obviously, we have our little mouse and we had our birds and we have our fox. And again, thinking back to all the importance of those characters and why is it important that they chose them to be those particular animals? Because obviously there's some reasoning behind that. That being said, now that you've watched that and you've kind of thought about it and you wrote something down, it's time for us to go to our playlist. And these are also, again, we're going to be dealing with 4 of them this time that you have your choice between. And of course, if you want to do a little extra credit, I would be so happy to see it. And all of these, again, are Uncommon Lit. One is The Open Boat. And The Open Boat, that's this picture over here. It's Stephen Crane. And, it's these people who kind of get stranded in a boat. It's kind of exciting. I'm not going to tell you the rest, but I promise you that it's really important for them to be in this boat and in the ocean and what's going on and the time and the place and all of that. That's all really, really important. And again, of course, you're going to do the questions that are associated with this. And then we have another one that is The Reef, and this one is set in the ocean. It's the one that my picture is sort of taking up the space of here. And I think that's self-explanatory that this is going to have something to do with the reef, and this is a much more modern story. It's not super modern, but it is much more modern. On a Mountain Trail, this is another one of those man versus nature ones. And you can see this is a picture here, and we've got a guy, and I bet you can tell he's on a mountain trail. And I bet there's some wolves involved. So this is kind of, if you're into that outdoorsy type of piece, certainly something you can do. And of course, the final one is The Sniper. The Sniper is this just crazy war one. So if you're interested in war stories or anything like that, I think there was some allusion in the word in some of our other ones to this particular piece. So that's something else for you to be looking at and interested in. So at this point, I would say it would be a good time for you to go into your playlist and make a decision on which one you are required. You're required to do one with all of the things. And then I'm going to ask you to also write a little something about the importance of the setting. This is going to be the second assignment in this particular unit, aside from here. So I guess it's actually the third. But I'm going to ask you to write about yours and how important the setting was to your particular story that you read. And that will be another one. So right now you're going to have one where you talk about the importance of the setting with the fox and the mouse. And then you're going to be doing the Common Lit assignment. And then you're going to tell me about the importance of the setting to this particular one that you're reading. And that's going to leave our next thing, and that's for you to apply this. And I'm sorry, my face is kind of getting in the way here. But in this one, you're going to have a timeline that you're going to create, and you're going to create a map of your story. So what happens, and so if you're so you're going to take that idea of what you did before for this timeline, and you've already kind of got the idea from when you made your story plot. But I want you to actually think about, not necessarily in the order that it's going to happen in the story, but it's the order that the life of the characters happen. So you can see up here in this one, you can see that it says, in this particular timeline, we see that they started out in 2002, and then this is when this happened, and this is when this happened. So you might go back to saying, okay, so my character was born at this time. And anything that's going to be an important part of your story, you have to kind of have it in your head that this is the timeline of what happened to your character. Okay, so that's the first piece you're going to do. And then you're going to also create a map. So I want you to think about where things are, what's happening, and what's going on. Now, depending on what you're doing will depend on what that map looks like. Okay, so like if everything happens in the house, the map might just be the floor plan of the house. If everything happens in a school, it might be what the floor plan looks like of the school. It might be that you're having something happen like what happened on the Mountain Trail one, right? Like where you're dealing with the person on the mountain. Or if you were going to be doing this from when we read Through the Tunnel, you might have said, well, here's in this one place, that's where the beach is, and this is where the rocky area is, and this is where, okay, all of those things would be things that you would have to create in order to have that map. Now, the importance of having those pieces is that I've found that when people have these things sort of created before they start, then the world that they write about becomes real. Um, in the past, I've noticed that oftentimes we suddenly make it so that this person's locker is right next to another person's in the story, but that wasn't the case, a week ago. So if you're going to have something like that happen, it's okay, but you have to have some reason why that person's locker was moved next to yours. Otherwise, your story starts to have holes in it and it starts to not really make sense. And then people start to question whether or not this is really a good story. And so we don't want you to do that. But if you have it all kind of mapped out, like this is the background of the character, this is when this happened, this is when so and so and so and so were together, and this is when they broke up, or this is where my house is, and this is where this house is, and this is where the person who moved away went to. You have all those things kind of created in your timeline and your map, then you can make it so the whole story makes sense and it becomes very logical. So you're going to do that. And normally we would have you share that with small groups. Okay, so that's what we normally would have had you do. But because we can't do that, we have a couple of things. I would advise you do both of these assignments on paper first. Okay, I want you to do them on paper first. And then what you're going to, because they're just going to make more sense and you're going to like doing it that way. I think this becomes really difficult otherwise. But once you've done it on paper, so I want you to do it on paper. And once you've done it on paper, then I want you to take a picture of it and upload that picture into the assignment on Schoology. Now I realize that that sometimes is not an option, and so if you cannot access the internet or anything like that and you are doing all of your work on paper, then just keep it until we can meet again or until we can grade it. I know there's some talk about there being some remote connections that are going to be made available for you later. Whether somebody comes by with something or they expect you to go into the school parking lot in order to do things. I know that that's something, but keep it around and keep track of it because I am going to be grading it. And then we'll make sure that we get that to me one way or another, whether someone comes and picks it up and gets it to me, or it's when we all get together again, hopefully, or if it's when they come around with some sort, on a bus or something like that with remote access for everyone. I know the school is really desperately trying to figure that out. I believe I will be putting this particular assignment, this whole unit of this week's work will be going on to the fourth quarter, and that means that we will definitely be doing grades for it. So I just wanted to share everything with you of what's going on. I hope all of this makes sense. I really hope I get to see you again. And everybody stay well, stay happy, keep in contact with people, but make it virtual. Things like I don't know if you know this, but Zoom is super easy to use and it's free right now. So, if you want to talk to your friends and see their faces and everything, you can Zoom them or FaceTime them or whatever. But, stay well, stay happy, stay connected, and hopefully we will all see each other again soon. See ya.